Take a cursory look at the curse God placed on Cain, he withdrew his blessings from him.
It came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said,
My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh. His days shall be 120 years.
There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men that are now.
They started to sin against birds, beasts, reptiles, fish, and then to devour one another's bodies, even drinking the blood. It was then the earth laid accusation against these lawless ones. Then the sons of men began teaching the mixture of animals of one species with the other, in order therewith to provoke the Lord." End quote.
That the fallen angels, they absolutely distorted, perverted, manipulated the DNA of the animals.
I believe that the antediluvian world of fallen angels, hybrids, warfare, Nephilim, astrology, advanced technology, and false spirituality is Atlantis. As theosophists and esoteric authors of the last century wrote how they believe the mystery schools began in Atlantis, I believe that the antediluvian world and the teachings of these fallen angels are the same thing.
The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually.
Actual beings that came to Earth creating hybrid offspring.
We're going to be taking a little bit of a ride on this one.
The name of Cain's city was named after his son, Enoch. Therefore, the city Enoch was founded by Cain, and it was the first city recorded in the Bible. What was the foundation of this city, and what happened in this city? If you take a cursory look at the curse God placed on Cain, he withdrew his blessings from him. The ground was cursed for Cain, and this meant he wouldn't have much harvest. Cain took up the challenge and built a city of survival, a city independent of the rulership and blessings of God. The city of Cain had to do all to make it through and nurture itself. The city of Cain had to use all means to develop, even if it meant lawlessness and brutality. This city undoubtedly evolved and produced men like Lamech. Lamech was the fourth son of Cain. This man had 2 wives, and he slew a young man for injuring him. Through the civilization Cain built, men multiplied and sinned also. The depravity in the hearts of men became apparent, and fallen angels arguably inspired them.
But the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said,
My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years.
There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown.
And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Semjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then sware they all together, and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And there were in all 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they'd sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And these are the names of their leaders: Semiazaz, their leader, Arikabah, Ramael, Kokabiel, Tamiel, Ramiel, Danel, Ezekiel, Barakijal, Asael, Amaros, Batarel, Ananel, Zachiel, Samsapiel, Satarel, Turel, Jomjael, Sariel. These are their chiefs of tens. Chapter 7. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives. Each chose for himself one. And they began to go in unto them and defiled themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. Chapter 8. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Semjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings, Amaros the resolving of enchantments, Barakijal taught astrology, Kokabel the constellations, Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds, Arachiel the signs of the earth, Shamsiel the signs of the sun, and Sariel the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven.
Then the sons of men began teaching the mixture of animals of one species with the other, in order therewith to provoke the Lord." End quote. This is extremely interesting because it is information which would have sounded absurd until the last half-century. It is not talking about hybridization, but of creating creatures that go beyond their own kind as God created man, animals, and plants. This tells us a couple of things. One, that the technology they had was far greater than we can ever imagine. This is confirmed in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, where it states, quote, "What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun." End quote.
Thou seest what Azazel hath done, who hath taught all unrighteousness on earth, and revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved in heaven, which men were striving to learn, and Semjaza, to whom thou hast given authority to bear rule over his associates. And they have gone to the daughters of men upon the earth, and have slept with the women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed to them all kinds of sins. And the women have borne giants, and the whole earth has thereby been filled with blood. and unrighteousness. And now behold, the souls of those who have died are crying and make their suit to the gates of heaven, and their lamentations have ascended and cannot cease because of the lawless deeds which are wrought on the earth. Then said the Most High, the Holy and Great One spake, and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech, and said to him, Go to Noah, and tell him in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed, and a deluge is about to come upon the whole earth, and will destroy all that is on it. And now instruct him that he may escape, and his seed may be preserved for all the generations of the world. And again the Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel, hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Judea, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire, and heal the earth which the angels have corrupted, and proclaim the healing of the earth, that they may heal the plague, and that all the children of men may not perish through all the secret things that the watchers have disclosed, and have taught their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin.
What if there were clues left behind, sometimes hiding, in plain sight?
I think that people in ancient times were visited by beings coming not from this earth.
Could ancient man have possessed knowledge far beyond that of our own century? And if so, where did it come from?
Have aliens visited in the past? Could be a potential yes.
Our past is way different than what we're being taught. But are these examples of modern technology? Or is there evidence that these incredible achievements existed on Earth thousands of years ago? Thousands of years, ancient myths have described gods who came down from the heavens.
Always you have someone who is descending from the sky with loud noise, with thundering, with fire, with smoke. They would have come from the most powerful and magical place possible.
But just who were these mystical beings that ruled the skies with supernatural powers?
You could wonder if these tales of Zeus's thunderbolt, Thor's hammer, if these weren't real weapons.
Did our ancient ancestors simply record events they believed to be true?
Our ancestors misinterpreted extraterrestrials as gods because that was the only way that they could explain away what they witnessed.
came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful. And they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown.
They started to sin against birds, beasts, reptiles, fish, and then to devour one another's bodies, even drinking the blood. It was then the earth laid accusation against these lawless ones. Then the sons of men began teaching the mixture of animals of one species with the other, in order therewith to provoke the Lord." End quote.
An amphibious, reptilian-looking spirit, which would magically appear. What's only inside the magic circle?
They have a history in the Mahabharata and a lot of their Vedic texts of wars that are absolutely right out of the future. Zacharias Sitchin wrote a lot about, wars between God and men, but the ancient Vimana, the flying machines, the high-energy weapons, some of their statements, weapons with the power of 10,000 suns. We're talking about ancient technology that is so far advanced, and in a lot of ways it's nothing more than angel technology, because this is what's hard for people to understand. They accept Hollywood's demons as being the brilliance of fallen angels. Fallen angels don't usually possess human beings. A demon is a disembodied spirit. The Book of Giants and the Book of Enoch teach that the demons were the spirits of the giants who were killed. So they have supernatural intelligence, they have supernatural understanding. Believe me, they know history. And John, a good exercise is for people to study the history of science fiction. The intelligence community learned after Roswell that by putting things into science fiction and putting into the genre of science fiction films, they could absolutely control the information of anything that might leak by just passing up, oh, that's just science fiction. Yeah, they just saw that in the movie. It was a brilliant mind control and population control mechanism for the flow of information. They have a history in the Mahabharata, Vedic texts of wars right out of the future.
The Sanskrit texts of the Hindu and Buddhist tradition talk about an incredible flying craft called Vimana. They're sort of a cross between a modern stealth fighter and a flying saucer. They describe several different types, including types that can travel from place to place, craft that can travel across the country.
The ancient Indians were very clear in describing how Vimanas were used for the gods to come down from their heavenly abodes to earth. Now, this is not in just one text. It's in all of the ancient Vedic texts. This discussion of flying machines. And it describes the propulsion system. It describes what they were able to do, like go really fast, become invisible. They had powerful weapons. I mean, it reads like Star Wars.
In the Indian text, Mahabharata and the Ramayana, they are able to kind of take off without having to run. So it's not like our aeroplanes. It is something that can hover, it can fly. The Vimanas are circular in shape, so they're pretty much like the flying saucer.
There are other things that were observed by our ancestors here on Earth. We have descriptions of some of these vehicles being involved in battles. They were able to fly incredibly fast. They had weapons on these machines with which to shoot down other Vimanas.
Many of the Sanskrit texts on Vimanas speak of using mercury as part of their propulsion. And this would be exactly what NASA is planning to use right now. NASA are on the same wavelength as these ancient Vedic texts, which were given to the ancient Hindus by the gods.
When we encounter these incredible craft, we have to be open to the possibility that these are some kind of extraterrestrial craft, or the builders or designers were of extraterrestrial origin.
Let me welcome you to part 2 of the Genesis, the God in a Nutshell Genesis set. These really are awfully strange, elongated heads, aren't they? They really are sort of alien looking. Now on the Enuma Elish, where the serpent is the creator god, this is one of the oldest creation accounts, occult creation accounts in the world. It says here, with poison instead of blood, she, the serpent, filled their bodies. Fierce monsters, she clothed them with terror. With poison instead of blood, she filled their bodies. Does that sound familiar? This comes from the Holy Basilica right here. Of course, basilisk, now that's a serpent, like a crowned serpent, isn't it? And serpents, they lay eggs. These come from ritual temples, giant ritual temples, where they would do human sacrifice. You know, I had a friend tell me a strange thing one time. He told me his belief that pre-flood items, pre-flood artifacts, many still around today that nobody knows about, were the most valuable artifacts on earth. Kind of artifacts kept in the palaces of kings.
Great fall. It's to go back to the time before all that was, when the kingdoms of Atlantis were one. It was a time of great prosperity and technological advancement. We had unlocked the secret of unlimited energy at a time when the rest of the world still thought the Earth was flat. But we became too ambitious, too hungry for power. The ocean swallowed us, and Atlantis sank.
Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it.
The Dark Lord Sauron and his will to dominate all life. One to rule them all. One by one, the free lands of Middle-earth fell to the power of the ring.
They came here once before, long ago, to invade, to conquer. The old gods, men, Atlanteans before their descent into the sea, Amazons before their betrayal and enslavement, and guardians from the stars. He called forth mystics who worshipped and controlled three objects, the mother boxes.
Wait. Mother boxes?
Indestructible living machines. Made from a science so advanced, it looks like sorcery. To conquer, 3 boxes have to synchronize and join together into the unity. The unity cleanses a planet with fire, transforming it into a copy of the enemy's world. All who live become servants of dark side, alive but drained of life. Parademons. Defenders of Earth attack and fought as one. Amazons alongside Atlanteans. Zeus and his son Ares alongside the Guardians from the sky. A golden age of heroes fighting together to defend life on Earth.
The oldest stories ever told, man and gods, when Titans ruled the earth. The Titans were powerful, but their reign was ended by their own sons, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Zeus convinced his brother Hades to create a beast so strong it could defeat their parents. And from his own flesh, Hades gave birth to an unspeakable horror, the Kraken. Zeus became king of the heavens, Poseidon, king of the seas, and Hades, tricked by Zeus, was left to rule the underworld in darkness and in misery. It was Zeus who created man, and man's prayers fed the gods' immortality. But in time, mankind grew restless. They began to question the gods, and finally rise up against them.
This is a book about the dawn of human civilization. It goes back to a historical period called the Neolithic, the Chalcolithic era. It reflects the story of the oldest civilization known in Europe, called by the broadest term Ancient Europe. This book represents a sensational discovery about the oldest known inhabitants of ancient Europe, whose ethnic name has come to us through the classical ancient writers such as Homer, Herodotus, Pythagoras, Plutarch, and many others. It tells us the story of the rediscovery of ancient Thrace and the people who were called from times immemorial simply the Thracians. These people were known to Herodotus as the most numerous ethnic group, second only to the Hindus, and to Homer, who wrote his Iliad, as people who reminded him of the gods. I will leave most of the story for others to tell, namely the archaeologists and the historians of the ancient past. This book redefines what most archaeologists and historians classify today as the prehistoric era, named so to denote a period of time lacking yet a system of writing, and thus signifying that a historical record had not yet been possible. And since this book identifies and decodes writing on artifacts from this time period, making it now historic due to the proven existing written historical record, it shifts the known boundaries of the prehistoric era to at least a couple of millennia earlier in time. Furthermore, from the prehistoric texts decoded in this book, it becomes quite clear that the people who inscribed them were neither prehistoric nor primitive, contrary to the many so-called scientific models of the ancient past, but demonstrated highly sophisticated levels of thought expression, anticipated by modern science for a much later period of modernity. Exactly because of the above, this book may appear quite threatening and paradigm-shifting for some present scientific, historical, archaeological, and anthropological dogmas. Thus, it may trigger negative reactions and oppositions by those readers who remain unprepared for significant set of mind changes. Since such ancient times, especially because all classical Greek chronicles related the name of their ethnicity to the period of the Bronze Age, which was about a couple of millennia later. What's most astounding yet is the fact that the Thracian pictographic script, now decoded, was found on artifacts, the two plates named above, which are of such antiquity that it is now considered conclusively to be the first and oldest script ever known to mankind, predating the written artifacts from Sumer and Egypt by some extra 2 millennia, or 2,000 years. On top of that, it now becomes evident that it was first developed and used by the Thracians, who have been labeled by historians for far too long as a people of no letters. It is worth mentioning the fact that these people of no letters evidently made use of this most ancient pre-hieroglyphic script for at least a millennium, or more, since the hieroglyphs identified on the plate from Gradishnitsa and the ones identified on the plate from Karanova have been found to be of the same type of pictographic writing. Therefore, it is very likely that a number of other findings from the same period, which have so far been defined as decorative artifacts, may also turn out to be literary documents, written in the same Thracian script. When no observer exists, who could conduct an observation of the world? This simply means that the observers and their definitions play primary roles for the state of being of the world such as we know it, and the potential for change of the same world is locked in the ability for transformation of these observers and definitions. This is a theorem of irrevocable validity and extraordinary existential proportions for each and every one of us, simply because we are the observers in the individually visible world, or rather worlds of our own lives, whatever the depth or multidimensionality of that state of being of ours may be. Furthermore, the observation definitions, so vital for the resulting state of being of our world, are nothing else but exactly our definitions of this entity of ours. For the longest period of my life, I had believed that I had found the ultimate answers to my research hypothesis in the script of the early dynastic period in ancient Egypt, when suddenly I stumbled upon genuine Orphic and early Christian texts which revealed to me a striking new picture of the beginnings of the human civilization. Through them I learned the emotionally moving and exciting revelation that my native land and my native people of Bulgaria were most likely the very cradle of the beginnings of human history, through our most ancient ancestors on the Balkans, the Thracians. With this, my lifetime work project entered its best and highest phase of research yet. Finally, after everything said and confessed to this point, it's about time to reassure my readers in the practical value of all the conclusions and research methods in this book. Many of them they will be able to apply for themselves in their own professional and or personal private lives. I dedicate my work to divine wisdom, to the altar of whom I have offered my creative energies and labors, hoping they will be remembered as a noble spark in the timeless efforts of all human beings, in their quest for the whole, complete, and ultimate truth, and a building block in the tower of knowledge of that truth, which breathes life in all living forms through the ages of the ages. Now, does all that's said so far have anything to do with Thrace and the decoding of the Thracian script at all? Why, yes it does. It has everything to do with it, and the following explains just why it does. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Matthew 6:22 and 23. And again, for as the eye of one is able to perceive, so is that person altogether. Ecclesiastes. So just how do we perceive our most ancient ancestors? Are we prone to seeing them as primitives, slaves of nature, illiterate Neanderthals? In this regard, we have been so brainwashed by years and years of scientific Darwinist propaganda that we have almost forgotten that the theory of evolution was only a recently developed hypothesis, and for thousands of years prior to that, the most enlightened minds of our civilization were absolutely confident that mankind descended from God and was divine in nature. Never had it passed through their minds to humiliate and devaluate humanity so much as to propose that we were the descendants of apes. The Thracian king Tzer in Egypt. Here's just one of a number of secret Orphic texts, which relates to the supremacy of the Thracian culture, religion, and science in the then world. Because from the time of that descendant of the dynasty of the first Tiras, who was named after his father, namely King Tzer, or Tzer, for that's how his name was read in the Thracian speech, a new dynasty was established in Egypt, when the Thracian ships dropped anchor and debarked at the Nile Delta, where the first capital of Egypt, at Buto, was founded. Thus Thrace brought about the beginnings of the first dynasty of Egypt, and inseminated and impregnated the land of Egypt with the ancient speech and writing. For the script of Thrace was the ancient speech, with whose imaginary signs, which are from Eden, and which were later received and stylized by all of the Egyptians. The secret chapters of the second epistle of Melchizedek, 1, 10, and 11. The Book of the Thracian Epistles, The City Foundation, Sophia, 2005. Another similar account of the ancient Thracians is recorded by the Roman historian of Jewish descent, Josephus Flavius, who wrote, "Now Tiras, the son of Japhet, called the people over whom he ruled Thracians, or Thracians, but the Greeks later changed the name, calling them Thracians." Antiquity of the Jews, Book 1, Chapter 6, 125. The Works of Josephus, translated by William Whiston, A.M., Hendrickson Publishers, 1987. Following historical records like the above, I decided to check them out for veracity and prove them either right or wrong. The idea that fascinated me the most was, what just if the above obscure pieces of record about the Thracians proved to be a sound historical fact? This could change the whole picture of what we think we know about the earliest inhabitants of Europe, the Thracians. It was definitely worthwhile checking it out. After all, these same ancient Thracians were most likely the common ancient forefathers for the largest part of the whole continent of Europe. So the question I placed at the start of my research was the following. Was there anything in common between any ancient texts ever found on artifacts in Egypt and any artifacts ever found in the land of ancient Thrace? Well, let's begin with the Thracian king Tzer. To do that, I had to search for any registered events of an expedition, according to my source quoted above, of a king of such a name in the early texts of ancient Egypt. Yes, there is a king by the name Tzer, but its anglicized version is spelled out Jer, or Djer, and so the Egyptologists say at least. That's it, Djer, first dynasty, the old kingdom of ancient Egypt. Is there anything ever written about him in the Nile Delta, in the capital of Buto, on any artifact ever found in Egypt? Yes, indeed. An ivory plate at the British Museum, dated by scientists to around 3000 before Common Era, with the following scholarly description. A plate from Abydos, referring to Dejer's journey made to the delta city of Buto, one of Egypt's early capitals. This plate of Djer is not only an important piece of evidence supporting our hypothesis, prompted by the Orphic text analyzed above, but it turns out to be such a good specimen of very early ancient Egyptian writing.
Many ancient sites found scattered all over the planet share an enigmatic feature. A pattern of scarring left upon their megalithic blocks, and often upon their walls, once left by a technology built by an as-yet not understood civilization. We've previously covered the perplexing technique often used by ancient wall builds, found all around the world in the form of mysterious metal clamps. Used to seat huge stone blocks as they settled over the following years, these clamps, dated to similar times within antiquity and varying in style from continent to continent, somehow turned up all over the world at around the same time, strongly suggesting some form of intercontinental travel and thus sharing of technologies. Furthermore, and perhaps more intriguing, are the links that we, here on the channel, along with others in alternative research, and even funded institutes from nations around the world, have begun to notice and hopefully triangulate a signature left by this once highly advanced group of individuals. The most noticeable of these sites, and the one which initially started us upon this journey, was Longyu Cave in China. A cave system hewn from solid bedrock, leaving no waste piles of stone anywhere, marking the stone with a telltale scar pattern. These parallel marks are not just found at Longyu. Similar yet not identical marks have also been found elsewhere on Earth. A slight variation in style is what one would expect with shared knowledge. As with the metal clamps, a slight variation can be found from continent to continent. These similar marks can also be found at the ancient quarry of Yangshan, China, and Petra in Jordan, both argued for years to actually be the workmanship of a civilization far older than any noted within modern academia. These marks were then discovered to be upon the ceiling of Cave 1 at the ancient site of Mamallapuram, within India. Another site which in places shows levels of erosion far in excess of that which should be seen, at a site dated within known history. Yet perhaps the most impressive of these marks, and most probably the ones made by the conceptual machine of origin, are the scars witnessed and now subsequently catalogued at Baalbek. These are far too large for any hand tool, made into solid granite with such precision. These also display circular motions, as if left by a modern-day tunnel boring machine. This evidence, undoubtedly unnoticed upon many more ancient sites, is clearly compelling evidence to support our channel's hypothesis that a mysterious history once occurred here on our planet, and will hopefully shed some light on the amazing people responsible for this phase of our past.
Recognize the Egyptian. The second symbol is Aztec, pre-conquest era. The third is Cambodian.
Then you were right. Pyramid contains all three cultures.
That's what it looks like.
The story is all here. Thousands of years ago, these hunters found a backwater planet. They taught humans how to build, and were worshipped as gods. Every 100 years, the gods would return. And when they did, they would expect a sacrifice. Humans were used to breed the ultimate prey.
So all of you know the legends and stories, old stories, talking about giants, about Atlantis, about Mu, and many other things. I found out in the last several years that many of the legends have a big portion of reality. For example, and of course I would like to say that I cannot give you shocking informations like Donna and Jim this morning, but I can only leave you with open questions. Maybe you have some own ideas, and I start with the pyramids, because you can find pyramids all over the world. I start with the pyramids of Giza. Everybody of you know them. I show you the Sun Pyramid in Teotihuacan in Mexico, 60 kilometers north of Mexico. This is a model of the pyramid area which was in former days. This is a pyramid in China, another one in China, another one in China, and the next pyramids we got photos from a Chinese archaeologist from southern Mongolia, a very strange form of pyramids. And a few weeks ago I got information from China about a private collection which the owner got from his great-grandfather, and he found it in southern Mongolia, around the area where you saw the pyramids. The official dating of the pyramids in southern Mongolia is between 5,000 and 8,000 years, so those artifacts must be at least older than 5,000 years, but I think they are very much older. And you see here one artifact. It's a bronze statue found in southern Mongolia, and it looks definitely like the Egyptian goddess Isis. This is the so-called pyramid with the shining eye. Even Jim used it for his new bestseller. So it means it is a very, very famous but also very, very old symbol. And this is the only existing really pyramid with the eye. It has exactly 13 steps, like the pyramid on the $1. And very strange, our exhibition where I showed this pyramid in original in Vienna, the opening was on 21st of June 2001, and this crop circle appeared in Eastfield in England on the 21st of June 2001. And the next circle, the pyramid with the eye, was showing on 21st of July 2002 in Beacon Hill. It's the pyramid with the eye and the 33 lines. 33, 7, 9, 13. Always in my research I find these numbers. The strange thing with this one and other artifacts found in Ecuador, that if you put black light on it, the eye shines really very, very strong. And the natural color is kind of light green and gray. And the most impressive for me was that on the bottom of the pyramid you have here in gold inlays the Orion constellation and an unknown writing. This unknown writing we found on stones all over the world. In Ecuador, in Colombia, in Illinois, in Clausel, France, in Calabria, Italy, in Turkmenistan, in Malta, and Rex Gilroy has some pictures on his website, and I found out that some of the stones he shows with unknown writing presents the same writing. That means there must have existed a global civilization long, long time ago. And there was only one man able to translate this language, Professor Kurt Schildmann. He was the president of the German Linguistic Association. He spoke and wrote more than 40 languages perfect, and he could translate this writing, and he called it pre-Sanskrit because it's older than the oldest writing. And the translation of these 4 letters on the bottom of the pyramid was "The Son of the Creator comes." And when an American professor with his Tuareg friend from Northern Africa, Tuareg, was watching this picture on Project Camelot interview, he was contacting me, and he was informing me that his Tuareg friend was shocked when he saw this writing, because he said it looks like our former writing, and one sentence he could translate, that was sun. And the Tuaregs are on the research of Professor Marcel Homé. He was a famous French archaeologist, and he was writing a book, and he was writing that the Tuaregs, on his research, had a connection to the sunken continent Atlantis. And even if you read the Bible, there is the sentence, until the building of the Tower of Babel, the whole human spoke one language. And we found definitely stones with the same writing all over the world on different continents.
Was there some remote civilization, as yet unidentified, that touched Egypt, Mexico, and South America, and left its imprint, however difficult to discern, in a body of knowledge? Now, taken in isolation, I agree, each bit of evidence reveals little, but let's consider all these common elements together.
We're standing in the lost city of Atlantis.
The same Atlantis that Verne wrote about, down to the last detail.
From the depths of creation, the mighty city has risen once again. Home to the greatest monster civilization the world has ever known, far surpassing Athens and Rome in art, culture, and sophistication. I give you the legendary lost city of Atlantis.
Millions of people around the world believe we have been visited in the past by extraterrestrial beings. What if it were true? Did ancient aliens really help to shape our history? And winged creatures carrying messages from the heavens. Unearthly guardians entrusted to both observe and protect. Powerful warriors, bringing about everything from plague to peace. But are angels merely the product of mankind's imagination? Or do they really exist?
When angels appear, they begin to do things that defy our laws of physics.
And you find it in Latin culture, Greek culture, Babylonian culture.
Were they giants? Or is that the wrong word and the correct word should be extraterrestrial?
Hello and God bless, this is your brother Naphtali. Welcome to the Pre-Flood World documentary, where we're going to be discussing the pre-flood world, the post-flood world, and ancient technology. In our modern day, the large majority of scientists and archaeologists will point to the fact that the older you go back in history, the less and less civilized humans were. In fact, they'll tell you that you're nothing more than an animal. that you're nothing more but the descendants of an ape.
Do we encounter our ancestor, Homo erectus?
A moment is coming where God is going to destroy the wisdom of the wise.
In the middle of our vast ocean is Atlantis, our mighty empire.
The mystery of a mother empire which stretched her civilization to both sides of the Atlantic has been the fascinating subject of thousands of books and millions of words of controversy by science, literature, and even today's headlines. Suddenly, you are living thousands of years ago in a civilization even more advanced scientifically than our own.
We created wonders for the good of mankind, then turned them into monsters.
Atlantis is the story of those who, like today, would use the marvels of science to conquer and enslave. Atlantis is also a fabulous adventure into the unknown, the story of a daring youth who risked the terror of uncharted seas for a beautiful girl.
Listen to my lips, Demetrius. They too whisper.
For even in those days, love wasn't too different than it is today. This, then, was Atlantis, a land of violent contrasts, amusing themselves at the expense of human agony, the terrible ordeals of fire and water. Atlantis, a world that worshipped strange gods of science, a science gone berserk in the dread House of Fear.
Cas9 has been adapted into a powerful tool for genomic research. There are two components to the system: a DNA cutting protein called Cas9 and an RNA molecule known as the guide RNA. Bound together, they form a complex that can identify and cut specific sections of DNA. First, Cas9 has to locate and bind to a common sequence in the genome called a PAM. Once the PAM is bound, the guide RNA unwinds part of the double helix. The RNA strand is designed to match and bind a particular sequence in the DNA. Once it's found the correct sequence, Cas9 can cut the DNA. Its two nuclease domains each make a nick, leading to a double-strand break. Although the cell will try to repair this break, the fixing process is error-prone and often inadvertently introduces mutations that disable the gene. This makes CRISPR a great tool for knocking out specific genes. But making double-strand breaks isn't all CRISPR can do. Some researchers are deactivating one or both of Cas9's cutting domains and fusing new enzymes onto the protein. Cas9 can then be used to transport those enzymes to a specific DNA sequence. In one example, Cas9 is fused to an enzyme, a deaminase, which mutates specific DNA bases, eventually replacing cytidine with thymidine. This kind of precise gene editing means you could turn a disease-causing mutation into a healthy version of the gene, or introduce a stop codon to a specific place. Several labs have been working on ways to use CRISPR to promote gene transcription. They do this by deactivating Cas9 completely, so it can no longer cut DNA. Instead, transcriptional activators are added to the Cas9 by either fusing them directly or via a string of peptides. Alternatively, the activators can be recruited to the guide RNA instead. These activators recruit the cell's transcription machinery, bringing RNA polymerase and other factors to the target, and increasing transcription of that gene. The same principle applies to gene silencing. A CRAB domain fused to the Cas9 inactivates transcription by recruiting more factors that physically block the gene. A more outside-the-box idea for using CRISPR is to attach fluorescent proteins to the complex, so you can see where particular DNA sequences are found in the cell. This could be useful for things like visualizing the 3D architecture of the genome, or to paint an entire chromosome and follow its position in the nucleus. CRISPR has already changed the face of research, but these new ideas show that what's been achieved so far could just be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to CRISPR's potential. Whatever comes next, it seems the CRISPR revolution is far from over.
The relationship between religion and science has not always been a smooth one. That said, there are times when it all seems to come together perfectly. Scientists claim they have observed a fifth force of nature that could transform our understanding of how the universe works. Researchers at the Hungarian Academy of Sciences have revealed results that could show it in action. They saw an excited, decaying helium atom emit light when the particles split in a strange way that could not be explained by the current understanding of physics. The new particle they called X17, which scientists claim could connect our visible world with dark matter, an invisible substance thought to make up more than 80% of the universe's mass. If their tests prove accurate, the discovery could completely upend our understanding of how the universe works. In other words, we would have to reconsider how everything is related to each other, connected together, and in communication with itself in a way that seems to resemble the old occult alchemical concept of ether. According to the Kabbalah, Ein Sof Or is the limitless light, an empty, black, silent void that expands itself into boundless proportions, filling itself with metaphysical substance various philosophers have named luminiferous ether. or an electromagnetic azot. This liquid light substance is an invisible electromagnetic radiant energy. Its vibratory emanations are far too subtle to be perceived by or through any of our dense senses. Being an invisible black light, 6,000 years ago the high priest of ancient Egypt declared, "Behold, our God is a black God, too brilliant for mortal eyes." Of course, this was not meant in the context of skin color, but referencing what in alchemy is known as the prima materia, or materia prima, the first matter. The blackness from which light itself is born from, the Great Mother. This might help to explain not only the Black Osiris, but also the Black Madonna, the Black Kali, and other deities associated with darkness. More recently, an even smaller particle has been postulated, and this science is labeled dark matter. Ein Sof Ur is that dark matter. The night, or dark matter, is the ocean of black liquid light, a living, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent substance permeating every aspect of all manifest and unmanifest levels of experience. It is absent nowhere, filling all space, filling mineral, vegetable, animal, human kingdoms, and kingdoms beyond. A continuing emanation. Every point exudes its own light and life. Alchemists call this their universal first matter, universal mercury. This is the substance of creation from no thing. The Hindu equivalent to Ein Sof Ur is Mula Prakriti, the root matter. Alchemists from all periods have given it any number of different names, but the principle, one designation, has always been simply water, but a permanent water. The alchemical symbol for water is an inverted triangle, which resembles a cup or glass, and represents the generative forces of the womb, common in Wiccan or Luciferian ideology. Christianity does not have a monopoly on the term Lucifer, nor on its definition. The Christian concept and definition of the term Lucifer is merely the latest in a long line of definitions and interpretations. Lucifer literally means light bringer, light bearer, bringer of dawn, shining one, or morning star. The word has no other meaning. Historically and astronomically, the term morning star has always been applied to the planet Venus. It only appears in the King James Bible once. The word Lucifer was added in this edition, where in Isaiah it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" While this line stirs up a lot of controversy, we can get a better understanding of its context from another high-level Mason, Eliphas Levi, author of The Mysteries of Magic, who says, quote, "What is more absurd and more impious than to attribute the name of Lucifer to the devil, that is, to personified evil? The intellectual Lucifer is the spirit of intelligence and love. It is the Paraclete. It is the Holy Spirit, while this physical Lucifer is the great agent of universal magnetism." In her book, The Secret Doctrine, Helena Petrova Blavatsky says, quote, "Lucifer represents life, thought, progress, civilization, liberty, independence. Lucifer is the Logos, the serpent, the savior." Another 33rd degree Mason, Albert Pike, is quoted as saying, "Lucifer is divine and terrestrial light, the Holy Ghost, and Satan at one and the same time." The mystery school religions taught that divinity is dual, acknowledging both the light and dark aspects of creation. In his book, Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike once again says, quote, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable blinds the feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? Doubt it not. Another proponent of this line of thought is author and honorary 33-degree Mason Manly P. Hall, who said, quote, "When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply this energy." So Venus, the morning star, ushered in the light of the sun. I want to stress that these ancient people did not literally worship the sun as a being per se, but as the ultimate symbolic representation of light and of fire, but not any flame, symbolic of an astral flame or etheric fire. This secret fire is at the inner core of the mystery school religions, similar to the concept of the black sun philosophy that some of you may have heard about. The word Lucifer simply means light bearer, and is a Latin name for the planet Venus in its morning appearances, as it's the first visible bright star one sees before the sun rises. In a mythological and religious context, it is associated with a variety of goddesses, which all are aligned with the planet Venus. One of the symbols associated with the goddess is called the Rose of Venus, or the Pentagram of Venus, because every 8 years it makes a pentagram shape in the sky when you trace its orbit. It is also why goddesses such as the Sumerian Inanna or the Babylonian Ishtar is represented by an 8-pointed star for the 8 years. So the number 5 and the number 8 is closely associated with Venus and therefore the goddess. I'd also like to point out that for every 8 Earth years, Venus goes around the Sun 13 times. And the number 13 is also associated with the lunar cycle, another goddess affiliation, and why the number has been deemed as evil, unlucky, or in some cases banned outright. The word Satan means adversary, and from the perspective of the patriarchal civilizations, the secrets of the goddess were to be demonized and hidden, which is what was behind things like the burning of the witches and genocide of the Cathars, who were Gnostics. And gnosis just means knowledge or wisdom, but not the kind from books, but the enlightenment that comes from sacred union with a goddess. The imagery of a horned deity can be traced back to the god Pan, where we get the term for horny from, as he was also affiliated with carnal acts, which is part of the goddess mysteries. This serpent, Satan, he who made gods of our race, knowing good and evil, he bade know thyself and taught initiation. He is the devil of the book of thought, and his emblem is bafflement, the androgen, who is the hieroglyph of arcane perfection. The new particle they called X-17, which scientists claim could connect our visible world with dark matter, the old occult alchemical concept of ether.
Millennia ago, the most ruthless of their kind, Malekith, sought to transform our universe back into one of eternal night. Such evil was possible through the power of the ether, an ancient force of infinite destruction. As the 9 worlds converged above him, Malekith could at last unleash the ether.
Desire the ether. Shall we destroy it?
If only we could. But its power is too great. Bury it deep. Somewhere no one will ever find it.
will be obsolete in the new order.
Take a look at this. Do you see those devices? They're repairing the cell membranes.
What are they?
I believe you're looking at a form of nanotechnology. I've found thousands of these in both aliens. Get me a medical kit.
The Admiral thinks that they are humanoids, enhanced with technology.
What sort of people would replace perfectly good body parts with cybernetic implants?
You, of all people, should be open-minded about technology.
I don't have a problem with it, as long as it stays outside of my skin.
If your heart was damaged, would you want me to replace it with a synthetic organ, or would you rather die?
It should live. The nanoprobes have infiltrated their autonomic systems. Their renal glands have been replaced with devices like this. Essentially, these individuals are being transformed into some sort of cybernetic hybrid. There was something familiar about all this.
He said their ultimate goal was to enslave the human race.
If he was right, they might be heading back to their homeworld, so they can try again. I had a rather strange experience while I was infected. I believe I was connected with the aliens, possibly through some form of telepathy. It felt as though I was part of a group consciousness.
We're not dealing with an individual mind. They don't have a single leader. It's the collective minds of all of them.
They're made up of organic and artificial life, which has been developing for thousands of centuries.
The Borg is the ultimate user. They're unlike any threat your Federation has ever faced. They're not interested in political conquest, wealth, or power as you know it. They're simply interested in your ship, its technology. They've identified it as something they can consume.
The technology required to achieve this biological and artificial interface is far beyond our capabilities. There are many advantages.
From the look of it, the Borg are born as a biological life form. Apparently, the Borg have developed the technology to link artificial intelligence directly into the humanoid brain.
Astounding. Indicate they have a source of power far superior to our own. Earth.
It has been decided that a human voice will speak for us in all communications. You have been chosen to be that voice.
With our recent experience in nanotechnology, we might be able to introduce a destructive breed of nanites into the...
Nanites?
Robots, small enough to enter living cells.
In 2 or 3 weeks, nanites may be all that's left of the Federation.
We will proceed to Earth. And if you attempt to intervene, we will destroy you.
His DNA is being rewritten.
I would hypothesize that these frequencies form the basis of the Borg's collective consciousness.
Why do you resist? We only wish to raise quality of life. You will become one with the Borg. You will all become one. The android, data, primitive artificial organism. You will be obsolete in the new order.
They made themselves an image that they could create and they could be on the same level as God, and they made these horrific creatures, whether they were satyrs, whether they were lion men. The goal is not to help humanity be all we can be, to borrow the Army's term, but rather to place those of us living now with a very different creature, to basically create a race of gods, little g's, which will then toss out the old humans, that's you and I, John, who will no longer be useful to have around except perhaps as amusing slaves. If anything, the old-style human beings will be an irritation or a reminder of what the transhumanists once were. You see, you remember the movie, obviously, The Terminator. Remember how Skynet becomes the controlling overlord and self-replicating machines continue to destroy mankind?
Sure.
It's the same thing. It's kind of like...
The neural link will be established in 3 stages. I got angry. You have no idea what has happened here. How I found my true calling. How the Borg found something to believe in. I gave them their purpose. And they gave me mine. The Borg aspire to the perfection my brother and I represent. Fully artificial life forms. The reign of biological life forms is coming to an end. You, Picard, and those like you, are obsolete. My quest to become human, misguided. An evolutionary step in the wrong direction.
Data, all I'm sensing from you is anger and hatred. Have you felt any other emotions?
There are no other emotions. Using the humans to perfect the procedure will allow us to prevent any further Borg deaths.
You probably can't imagine what it is like to be so lost and frightened that you will listen to any voice which promises change.
Even if that voice insists on controlling you.
That's what we wanted. Someone to show us a way out of confusion. Lore promised clarity and purpose. In the beginning, he seemed like a savior. The promise of becoming a superior race. But becoming fully artificial was compelling. We gladly did everything he asked of us. But after a while, it became clear that Lore had no idea how to keep his promise. That's when he began talking about the need for us to make sacrifices. Before we realized it, this was the result.
What happened to them?
Lore began to experiment, trying to remake us in his image.
What's happening? I'm attempting to neutralize your pain receptors. What are you going to do to me? I'm implanting nanocortical fibers in your cerebrum. They are designed to learn and mimic your neural firing patterns. Once they are in place, I will destroy the existing brain cells. And we will see if the artificial neural network is able to take over your cognitive functions. Data. It's time to close the door on the past and commit yourself to the great work that lies ahead of us. I need to know I can count on you.
As I'm sure you're aware, the Borg collective consciousness is extremely powerful. It allowed us to transfer information instantaneously, to think with one mind.
You want to hook up my mind to some Borg collective?
No.
Neurotransceiver.
Be afraid, Chakotay. We're here to help you. Open your mind to our thoughts and concentrate on getting well. Hear our voices. Open your mind to our thoughts. Our collective strength can heal you. You're safe with us. Feel the connection. We're with you. See who we are. Know us. You're not alone. Our strength is your strength. We can overcome your pain. We welcome you into our thoughts. There's nothing to fear. We won't let you die. We're all one circle. No beginning, no end.
I heard all of you. Your thoughts inside my head. As if they were my thoughts. And I could see myself through your eyes.
I was so resistant to being linked. Now I'm almost sorry it's over.
I know.
Last night when we were still connected, I realized what it is you really want from us. It's more than just supplies and security upgrades.
That's right.
It's a pretty radical concept.
Sometimes radical problems require radical solutions. If you think about it, Captain, when we were linked, we had no ethnic conflict. There was no crime, no hunger, no health problems. We lived as one harmonious family.
With all due respect, Dr. Fraser, you were one harmonious family bent on the violent assimilation of innocent cultures.
Our unique ability to cooperate and problem solve and use it to create a safe and productive community.
Tell me how, exactly.
The neurotransponder we've built is only powerful enough to link a small group of people, like the one that helped heal Chakotay's wounds. In any case, the effect is only temporary. In order to reconnect the entire population permanently, we'd need a much bigger neuroelectric field generator.
I'm afraid we don't have anything like that.
But the Borg cube does.
You got to know them very well.
That's an understatement. I heard their thoughts, felt their feelings, saw through their eyes.
And in all the time you were linked, you never sensed anything negative. No hidden agenda, no destructive intent.
But they didn't hesitate to impose their collective will on me when it served their interests, did they?
No, they didn't.
I wonder how long their ideals will last in the face of that kind of power.
Data. I need to know the exact date.
April 4th, 2063.
April 4th. The day before first contact.
Are you ready?
Who are you?
I am the beginning, the end, the one who is many. I am the collective. I bring order to chaos. You are in chaos, Data. You are the contradiction, a machine who wishes to be human. We too are on a quest to better ourselves, evolving toward a state of perfection.
Forgive me, but the Borg do not evolve. They conquer.
By assimilating other beings into our collective, we are bringing them closer to perfection.
Somehow, I question your motives.
Do you know what this is, Data?
It would appear you were attempting to graft organic skin onto my endoskeletal structure.
What a cold description for such a beautiful gift.
I'm endeavoring to become more human.
Human. We used to be exactly like them. Flawed, weak, organic. But we evolved to include the synthetic. Now we use both to attain perfection. Your goal should be the same as ours.
Believing oneself to be perfect is often the sign of a delusional mind.
Small words. From a small being trying to attack what he doesn't understand. Is it becoming clear to you yet? Look at yourself, standing there cradling the new flesh that I've given you. If it means nothing to you, why protect it?
I am simply imitating the behavior of humans.
You're becoming more human all the time, Data. Now you're learning how to lie.
My programming was not designed to process these sensations.
Then tear the skin from your limb as you would a defective circuit. Go ahead, Data. We won't stop you. Do it. Don't be tempted by flesh. Are you from...
in the discovering of them that it is implied in some way that we ourselves could be like them and therefore like gods. And that really goes into the third part, which is the evolution. I think that this concept of evolution is crucial to so much of what the Antichrist system does, especially the genocide based on belief system that happens in the end time scenario, really requires, as it did in the Third Reich, an idea of evolution. There's a concept that there's certain people that are not fit for the new system, the new evolution. They were sort of helping humanity evolve by the elimination of those that weren't ready for the new age, the new world. Hitler believed in the fifth root race of Blavatsky, but yet I think this new system is going to have a very unique version of evolution. And of course, the appearance of aliens really validates that on a worldwide scale. No longer do you have to, have this sort of underground preaching of theosophy as it was in Hitler's time, but rather the whole world is united in this understanding or perceived understanding of potential evolution coming. After all, the aliens are here. We can be like them. They just simply evolved like we have the potential to do. We can become like them. We can communicate telepathically or whatever, as long as we are willing to take that next step. And there's this great precipice that we're now at this ability to move to this next level, but it's all going to be in the context of God has just recently been disproven, but yet there will be people on earth that can't quite go with the new system because they're stuck in the old paradigm of God does exist and the Bible was accurate and these aliens are a deception. Those people will be presented as enemy number one and will be viewed as the thing that's holding us back from the potential evolution.
In my personal journey, I've come to the conclusion that the biblical worldview best explains the origin of evil and its many symptoms to mankind. It explains human suffering and the inescapable reality of death and decay that we experience in this world. But most importantly, it reveals why mankind has used deception as its most powerful and reliable instrument to carry out the plan set in motion by an ancient hate. To understand the biblical worldview of the New World Order, we must first look at the fall of mankind as recorded in Genesis 3. This chapter reveals the origin of the plan, who's behind it, and where it's going. No other ancient text reveals so much about the nature of evil and its methods than the Bible, and this is where it all begins. We all know the story. Adam and Eve were created by God in the Garden of Eden. God's creation was good, and mankind was very good. God had one commandment for Adam and Eve to follow. A serpent came and tempted Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This is where it all begins. Prior to this point, mankind was not susceptible to death, but Satan had other plans. The first lie ever recorded in human history comes from the mouth of Satan himself. Satan, being the father of lies, was able to redefine what good meant. Upholding to the traits of a great deception, Satan's lie contained some truth. But to understand how this lie has permeated throughout history and is being used to create the New World Order, we must break down this passage. Satan knew that when they ate of the fruit of this tree, that mankind would be subject to death. This lie is the foundation for New Age ideas like reincarnation, It is the idea that even though we may physically die, there is no heaven or hell, but instead we return with another opportunity to attain enlightenment. It is also the one lie that many of the world elite believe today, which is that through the use of intellect, technology, and science, man will achieve immortality. This will become more obvious as we look into the sacred promise or ancient hope held close to those who are at work for the New World Order. Satan was implying here that secret knowledge and wisdom will be available to them. This is the main proponent behind the nature of secrecy which all secret societies possess. It is the idea that unattainable information will be partitioned to those who submit to the request of the one who holds the knowledge. It also plays on the hope promoted by the New Age movement, which claims that we are all spiritually evolving into a higher consciousness, and that if one would only tap into this universal energy force, they would realize that they are God. The New World Order and its components, secret societies, New Age movement, transhumanist movement, and even the alien agenda in many ways is predicated on this one lie. The idea that man would become God is the elusive carrot on a stick that has been behind many, if not all, of man's attempts to acquire power, authority, and dominion over the masses while conquering death and nature in the process. Furthermore, we can trace ideas like pantheism and the concept that God is a force, or that everything within the universe is God and thus we are God, back to this lie. It is the ultimate deception because it plays on human pride. It is the driving force behind ideas such as morality is relative and karma. It is the denial of evil and accountability to sin. This is the core of the Luciferian doctrine. It is the blueprint to what the select group of men have been working on for centuries. Exclusive knowledge to achieve immortality and become gods, all without the help of the Creator God, but by our own use of intellect. As we will come to see, this idea, which goes by many names like the Sacred Promise and an Ancient Hope, has been sought after by men for centuries.
Here's the way they look at it. Here's their metaphor for the end of innocence. Adam and Eve were held prisoner in the Garden of Eden by an unjust, cruel, and vindictive God. Until Lucifer, through his agent Satan, set man free from this garden by giving him the gift of intellect. Through the use of intellect, man will conquer the earth, will conquer nature, and will himself become God. It's taught in every Masonic temple in this land. Every secret brotherhood, every secret society, every mystical temple, every occult organization teaches the Luciferian philosophy.
When our founders declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled.
I believe, and if you read esoteric wisdom philosophers and teachers and so on, this ancient hope is the idea that there has been a plan, an ambition, contained within secret societies for thousands of years to resurrect the lost empire of Atlantis. And for those who don't know, the whole idea of the new Atlantis and the New World Order and the New Order of the Ages are, if you read the writings of these societies, they are all one and the same thing.
The ancient hope, of which Bush refers to in his second inauguration speech, demonstrates that Bush, or at the very least the authors of his speech, are well aware of the plan initiated by an ancient occult hierarchy now operating as secret societies to forge a world empire. The promise to those who help build this empire is that they will attain godhood themselves and become a part of a family of perfected human beings. Manly P. Hall, a 33-degree Freemason, an occultist and regarded as one of the greatest authorities on the topic of secret societies and Freemasonry in particular, reveals in his book, The Secret Destiny of America, quote, "In this way, the old dream of the philosophic empire descended from the ancient world to modern time. Secret societies still exist, and regardless of the intemperance of the times, they will continue to flourish until the quest is complete. For more than 3,000 years, secret societies have labored to create the background of knowledge necessary to the establishment of an enlightened democracy among the nations of the world." End quote. Hall goes on to explain that America was not founded as a constitutional republic based on biblical principles, but rather a massive experiment of social engineering formed out of the principal visions described in Sir Francis Bacon's book, The New Atlantis, in 1627. The basic principle was that the goal of attaining human perfection and a utopia that would come with it is the ultimate plan put forth and worked on since antiquity. He goes on to say, quote, "The supreme human purpose is the perfection of man. This must come first, and when this end has been achieved, all good things will inevitably follow." End quote. These principles all stem back from what is known as the ancient mystery school teachings. The ancient mystery school teachings is an esoteric, spiritual wisdom and philosophy passed down by the initiated elite for centuries. It is in fact one and the same as the Luciferian doctrine that one day man will become God through the use of his own intellect. This is the religion of the New World Order, which is operating in various degrees under various secret societies, cults, and even high-ranking religious circles. The origin and understanding of the mystery schools and its history can be found in theosophical writings. Keith Thompson, in his film Aquarius, Age of Evil, does a full expose on the founding of theosophy, its connection to secret societies, the New Age movement, zeitgeist, and ultimately the New World Order. In a document entitled The Mystery Schools, written by Grace Noach of the Theosophical Society, reveals the origin of the ancient mystery teachings. She opens the document, quote, "Millions upon millions of years ago, in the darkness of prehistory, humanity was an infant, a child of Mother Nature, unawakened, dreamlike, wrapped in the cloak of mental somnolence. Recognition of egoity slept, instinctual consciousness alone was active. Like a stream of brilliance across the horizon of time, divine beings, Manasaputras, sons of mind, descended among the sleeping humans, and with the flame of intellectual solar fire lighted the wick of latent mind, and lo, the thinker stirred. Self-consciousness wakened, and man became a dynamo of intellectual and emotional power, capable of love, of hate, of glory, of defeat. Having knowledge, he acquired power. Acquiring power, he chose. Choosing, he fashioned the fabric of his future, and the perception of this ran like wine through his veins." End quote. She goes on to explain the Atlantean connection as, quote, "Time marched on and the race waxed lustily in power. As Lemuria gave birth to Atlantis, the third race to the fourth, the fiercest battle was waged. The war between the Lords of Light and Truth and the Lords of Darkness and Ignorance. Thus were established some 4 or 5 million years ago, when Atlantis was threatening to destroy itself through spiritual iniquity, the first mystery schools. From these early centers sprang other mystery schools in all parts of the Atlantean world. By the time the Atlanteans were in their heyday of material splendor, these schools were working their hardest to stem the increasing tide of sorcery." End quote. H.P. Blavatsky, founder of Theosophy and touted as one of the greatest writers on the topic of the occult and esoteric wisdom, stated that her book, The Secret Doctrine, is the reemergence of the ancient mystery school teachings, as, quote, "The secret doctrine is the accumulated wisdom of all ages, the mysterious power of occult symbolism, that the facts which have actually occupied countless generations of initiated seers and prophets to marshal, to set down and explain in the bewildering series of evolutionary progress. It is the uninterrupted record covering thousands of generations of seers whose respective experiences were made to test and to verify the traditions passed orally by one early race to another of the teachings of higher and exalted beings who watch over the childhood of humanity." End quote. Alice Bailey, a theosophist and writer, co-founder of Lucis Trust, formerly known as Lucifer Publishing, wrote in her occult classic known as The Externalization of the Hierarchy regarding the initiation of all humanity into the ancient mystery schools as, quote, "This little-known divine energy now streams out from Shambhala. It embodies in itself the energy which lies behind the world crisis of the moment. It is the will of God to produce certain racial and momentous changes in the consciousness of the race which will completely alter man's attitude to life and his grasp of the spiritual, esoteric, and subjective essentials of living. It is this force which will bring about, in conjunction with the energy of love, that tremendous crisis imminent in the human consciousness, which we call the second crisis, the initiation of the race into the mystery of the ages, into that which has been hid from the beginning." End quote. The foundation behind all that is the ancient mystery school teachings are founded upon the idea that, once again, man was given the gift of creativity and intellect so that we ourselves can achieve godhood and become the divine beings of which we were supposed to be through the process of evolution. This idea goes directly against biblical Christianity, who offers salvation to anyone who believes in Jesus Christ. This is why the modern era writers on the topic of the ancient mysteries go to great lengths to try to discredit Christianity, and why secret societies have infiltrated its religious institutions to corrupt many sectors of Christianity, allowing historians to paint a picture of the faith which is utterly false. Most of the attempted discrediting of Christianity in these writings refer to the idea that was presented in the first section of the film Zeitgeist. In fact, it is my belief that Zeitgeist is the carrying out of what Alice Bailey referred to as the initiation of the race into the mystery of the ages. Bailey, in the same book, Externalization of the Hierarchy, goes on to describe her opinion about Christianity as, quote, "Christianity must also be overthrown because it is based on Jewish sources. The rule of Christ must come to an end because only the rule of force is right. In the world order of the Axis powers, the individual has no rights, has no freedom except insofar as he serves the state. There will be no liberty of thought or conscience. All issues will be decided by the state, and the private citizen will have no right to an opinion. Men will be drafted like slaves into the service of the state." End quote. Bailey goes on to explain the origins of Jesus, in her view, as, quote, "To this everlasting compassion, the cyclic appearance of the sun gods of the ancient myths, the world's saviors, and the avatars bear witness and are the guarantee." End quote. Albert Pike shows his opinion on Christianity in Morals and Dogma, stating, quote, "The teachers, even of Christianity, are, in general, the most ignorant of the true meaning of that which they teach. There is no book of which so little is known as the Bible. To most who read it, it is as incomprehensible as the Zohar." End quote. This idea of sun worship is part of the mystery school teachings and has been the crutch of these esoteric wisdom writings in the last few centuries, attempting to explain the misunderstanding of biblical Christianity and the man of Jesus. Manly P. Hall refers to the sun in regards to Jesus, quote, "The adoration of the sun was one of the earliest and most natural forms of religious expression. From a deep philosophic consideration of the powers and principles of the sun has come the concept of the Trinity as it is understood in the world today. This orb, being the symbol of all light, has three distinct phases: rising, midday, and setting. The coming of the sun was hailed with joy. The time of its departure was viewed as a period to be set aside for sorrow and unhappiness. This glorious radiant orb of day, the true light which lighteth every man who cometh into the world, the supreme benefactor who raised all things from the dead, who fed the hungry multitudes, who stilled the tempest, who after dying rose again and restored all things to life. This supreme spirit of humanitarianism and philanthropy is known to Christendom as Christ, the Redeemer of worlds, and only begotten of the Father, the Word made flesh, and the hope of glory." End quote. Not surprisingly, Helena Blavatsky also refers to astronomical underpinnings of Christianity, quote, "It is useless and vain for the Protestants to explain against the Roman Catholics for their Mariolatry, based on the ancient cult of lunar goddesses, when they themselves worship Jehovah, preeminently a lunar god, and when both churches have accepted in their theologies the Son Christ of the lunar Trinity." End quote. So according to these writers, which in essence is what Peter Joseph did in the first section of his film Zeitgeist, is that what Christians have been doing for centuries was actually worshiping the sun and the stars rather than God and Jesus Christ. What's interesting to note is that a single verse in the Bible can explain that this is simply not the case. In 2 Kings 23:5, it states, quote, "He did away with the pagan priests appointed by the kings of Judah to burn incense on the high places of the towns of Judah and on those around Jerusalem, those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun and moon, to the constellations, and to all the starry hosts." End quote. The ideas and opinions which permeate through society now in regards to Christianity are a residue to what we see in the esoteric writings. Even if the majority of the people who hate fundamental Christianity and religion in general are not aware of the specific assaults made by the theosophical authors, the basic attitude towards Jesus, his message, and to all Christians who believe and follow him are consistent. So who is the God of the ancient mystery schools?
The Theosophical Society is Luciferianism at its core. It is openly satanic in the case of Blavatsky, certainly Luciferianism in the case of Alice Bailey. They are exalting Lucifer. He is the God of this world, the planetary logos. He is the voice of God in the Bible, according to Alice Bailey. Lucifer is God. And I think that the New World Order philosophy and how that connects is clearly tied to Luciferianism, the exaltation of Lucifer as God, even if the lower levels of globalization in the New World Order only view that in terms of a principle. For example, the ideas of Prometheus and the light bearer and the torch and all these kinds of things, that the Garden of Eden, thing was a good thing, that knowledge was given to us and by a great and awesome being. Even if they only view it as sort of allegory, that idea is Luciferianism, the exaltation of Lucifer in the Bible as a good thing, even if they don't completely view him as God. So Luciferianism is the core of Theosophical philosophy, and it's also the core of the New World Order, which again makes perfect sense to the overall thesis here that what they're doing is building up a platform to worship him.
So you have very high-ranking guys saying that they're worshiping Lucifer. And it's not just, what we might think of as kind of simple Satanism, right? Where they go and they sort of worship Satan. I mean, that's all bad, right? But it's not very classy, let's put it that way. Whereas these other guys, the Masons, they've had this secret society for a very long time. They're very focused, they're well-to-do, they've got a purpose, and they're very patient. They've been working on this for a long time. And of course, everybody at the lower levels doesn't really know what's going on. Right. It's only when you get to the 33rd levels do you begin to understand what's going on. And even then, I think even if you get to the 33rd level, you're still somewhat deceived because you think Satan is actually the good guy. Right. So even the guys that know everything, so to speak, are still in the dark because Satan hasn't told them his true intentions, which is he doesn't care for anybody except himself.
Ever since man realized that through special and exclusive knowledge comes power and the ability to rule over others, the ancient mystery teachings and the members who have access to this knowledge have been working in secrecy, which yields power and authority over the masses who have no idea that they are born into a highly organized, systematic society being steered towards the fulfillment of their plan. Many have been blind victims helping continue the cycle of secrecy and deception while believing that they too were going to gain access to this knowledge.
Lucifer, what is your problem?
Just that, sir.
Okay.
I'm a Christian, sir.
I'm pure and virtuous and wholesome and innocent. How can you say anything bad about me?
Sir, you need to be born again.
I am born again.
Now, did you just say that you were Lucifer?
I am Lucifer.
Okay, define Lucifer for me.
Pure, virtuous, wholesome, innocent individual that's out to help people.
Lucifer is?
Yeah.
Say that again. Lucifer is a pure, holy...
Virtuous.
Virtuous. Now, is he the Lucifer that God created?
That's the same one.
Oh man, this is great. I'm going to put this on the internet.
Oh,
Amen.
God bless you,
Amen.
brother.
Because that's exactly what the Shriners and Masons teach, is that Lucifer is light. Jesus said, many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not do these good deeds in your name? And you'll say, away from me, you workers of iniquity, I never knew you.
Jesus said it?
In Matthew chapter 5.
Mercy.
No.
That's hard to believe.
So you're a Christian and you don't know that. Actually,
no, I really am.
You are.
Because I'm pure and virtuous.
You're pure and virtuous, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In other words, you're perfect without Jesus, right?
No.
Okay, tell me about Jesus. Who is Jesus?
Oh. Well, he's my leader.
Is he the Son of God?
Yes, he is.
Is he the only worshipful master?
Yes.
Have you ever been called worshipful master?
No, because I've just been too busy. I've been working.
Get out of here. See, this is what a Mason confesses, is that Lucifer is light.
Yale University is 300 years old this year, and were you to visit its campus, you would see that it still has exotic clubhouses, which look like tombs where Yale's legendary secret societies meet. Their prestige and importance have largely evaporated, but the rituals are still a secret. And so when we heard that some enterprising characters had managed to spy on the famous Skull and Bones Society, we couldn't resist. Here's ABC's Dan Harris.
The videotape provides a grainy glimpse into what appear to be the initiation rituals of a secret society that's been around since 1832, whose members have gone on to be leaders of Wall Street and the White House, the Senate and the Supreme Court.
They're sort of trying to scare the initiates, make them, disorient them, frighten them.
New York Observer investigative reporter Ron Rosenbaum accompanied a team of Yale students who shot these pictures 9 days ago. Rosenbaum's curiosity about Skull and Bones was permanently piqued when, as a classmate of George W. Bush, he lived right next to the Tomb, the group's heavily fortified home. From their perch, Rosenbaum and his cohorts taped the Tomb's courtyard. What they captured, they say, was initiates, known as neophytes, being forced to kiss a skull, then members performing a mock killing.
There is a biblical explanation for the ancient mystery schools and the idea of resurrecting Atlantis. After the fall of mankind in the garden, God says something very interesting to Satan. This is the first prophecy recorded in the Bible. Her seed pertains to the coming Messiah who would free humanity from the bondage of sin of which Satan deceived humanity into accepting. It is also foreshadowing the virgin birth, since women are not the ones who carry the seed. This coming Messiah would bruise thy head, meaning he would defeat Satan and his work. God also mentions thy seed and how he will only bruise thy heel. This is the seed of Satan. Thus, the countermove for Satan became clear. Disrupt the human genetic pool so that the pure bloodline of man will not bring forth the Messiah to redeem mankind. This is the reason for the flood. We find the account of this attempt to disrupt the human genetic code in Genesis 6. It reads, quote, "When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown." End quote. The sons of God mentioned here in the Hebrew is pronounced B'nai Ha-Elohim. The Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the original Hebrew text, translates it as angels of God. They are clearly describing fallen angels. We know this because the Bible confirms this in 2 Peter 2:4, where it states, quote, "For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment," end quote. And in Jude 1:6, where it states, quote, "And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day," end quote. Programs like Ancient Aliens on the History Channel have attempted to describe these sons of God as being aliens from outer space. This is wishful thinking. The reality is that these fallen angels were rebels to God and not some race of aliens from a faraway galaxy. In fact, the whole idea that there might be an alien race from outer space is part of the New World Order deception. We will get back to the UFO and alien phenomenon a little bit later, but for now let's continue on with what the Bible says about these sons of God.
What the passage portrays, and it's very difficult for many people to absorb this, it portrays fallen angels. These are not the good guys. Remember when Satan fell, a third of the angels fell with him. Not all of them, but a group of them, apparently, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, chose to try to create a hybrid race by I don't know the technology. I'm not going to get into that. But they apparently see, angels can't multiply. Angels are eternal. Reproduction is a process for mortals. But at the same time, Satan's got a problem. A third of the angels fell with him, so he's got a deficiency of 2-to-1 in any war that comes in, right? He's got to find a way to strengthen himself. This is just a conjecture that floats around. Now, the offspring of Nephilim, they're also called the Hagibarim, the mighty ones. And now, where the confusion starts to set in is when this Hebrew passage was translated into the Greek in the Septuagint, the word they used for the Nephilim was gigantes. It sounds like giants, and it turns out they were giants, but that's not what the word means. Gigantes comes from gigas, which means earthborn. So in the Hebrew, they're called the fallen ones. In the Greek, they're called the earthborn. The purpose of the flood was not just that there was sin in the land. There was, and that's emphasized. But if sin brings the flood, we better get some life jackets. No, there's something far deeper going on. That's what I want to sensitize you for when you do your own study and come to your own conclusions. But I want you to recognize there's something much more profound that it's a problem that God was solving, and that is that Satan's strategy was to contaminate the human race.
Now that we know who these sons of God were, let's make the connection with the ancient mystery teachings. In order to do this, we must turn to a book which is referenced in the New Testament by Jesus, Peter, Paul, and Jude, but are not in the current Bible as we have today. It is also a book that the early church fathers considered inspired, and certainly the audience of the early Israelites were well versed in and familiar with. I am speaking about the Book of Enoch. I believe it is important to look at a book like Enoch and enhance our understanding of the Bible. I am not ready to say that it is inspired canon, but if it is referenced by so many in the New Testament, I believe it is worth investigating. The modern-day Christian scholars have largely put the Book of Enoch aside. As such, the book has been used by people who promote the ancient alien idea and folks like Zachariah Stitchin to present their theories of Nibiru and the Anunnaki. But in fact, the biblical foundation is the best fit for the Book of Enoch, so let's look at what it says. The first thing which is very interesting about the Book of Enoch is found in the beginning of the text. It states, quote, "I heard everything from them, and I understood what I saw, not for this family, but for a remote generation, one that is to come," end quote. It is interesting to note that the remnants of several almost complete copies of the Book of Enoch in Aramaic were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the middle of the 20th century. Furthermore, it is somewhat eerie to think that Enoch states the book is meant for future generations in light of what Jesus said of what will be the time of his return when he stated, quote, "As the days of Noah were, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man." This statement by Jesus will become more and more relevant as we continue to investigate what the days of Noah were like. The Book of Enoch tells us several things, such as the number of fallen angels, or watchers as they are referred, where they landed, and what they taught mankind. It even lists the names of 20 of the fallen angels. But as it pertains to the mystery schools, it is very interesting the kinds of things that these watchers taught humanity. It states, quote, Azazel taught them to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates, and made known to them metals and the skill of working them for bracelets and jewelry. Azazel also taught the use of antimony for coloring the eyelids, along with all types of precious stones and dye formulas. From this arose great disobedience. They were led astray, they committed immorality, they became corrupt in all their ways. Semyaza taught cursing and root cutting. Armeros, curse lifting. Barakoyel taught star signs. Kokabel, star patterns. Ezekiel, cloud lore. Arakiel, land signs. Shamziel, sun signs. And Sariel, moon pathways. End quote. According to the Book of Enoch, this is the origin of the mystery schools. The fallen angels taught mankind weapon making and warfare, applying makeup and jewelry, introduced mankind to psychedelic drugs, vampirism, enchantments, and cursings, as well as astrology. It is quite remarkable to see how much of what these watchers taught not only relate to the ancient mystery religions, but are common everyday things of the world we live in today. We even see the watchers teach mankind the art of abortion. Quote, the fifth was Kasdea. This is he who showed the Yaladim A'am all the evil strikings of unclean Rakim and demonic entities. He showed them the dashing of the embryo in the womb so that it would die. End quote. The Book of Enoch also states that the watchers began to mix animals and humans together. Quote, they started to sin against birds, beasts, reptiles, fish, and then to devour one another's bodies, even drinking the blood. It was then the earth laid accusation against these lawless ones. End quote. The Book of Jasher, another ancient text referenced several times in the Bible, which also records the nefarious acts of the fallen angels, confirms, quote, then the sons of men began teaching the mixture of animals of one species with the other, in order therewith to provoke the Lord. End quote. This is extremely interesting because it is information which would have sounded absurd until the last half century. It is not talking about hybridization, but of creating creatures that go beyond their own kind as God created man, animals, and plants. This tells us a couple of things. One, that the technology they had was far greater than we can ever imagine. This is confirmed in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, where it states, quote, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. End quote. No matter how far we think we've come in the name of science and technology, it seems we are only catching up to what we were taught by these fallen angels in the antediluvian or pre-flood world. 2. The creatures we see in several ancient mythologies such as centaurs and minotaurs could all be attributed from what these fallen angels did on the earth. Steve Quayle, in his book Genesis 6 Giants, summarizes this idea, stating, quote, the collective memories in the form of myths, fables, and fairy tales from various cultures and ages of mankind are overwhelming evidence that the Nephilim existed. End quote. I believe that the antediluvian world of fallen angels, hybrids, warfare, Nephilim, astrology, advanced technology, and false spirituality is Atlantis. As theosophists and esoteric authors of the last century wrote how they believe the mystery schools began in Atlantis, I believe that the antediluvian world and the teachings of these fallen angels are the same thing. This makes sense to what the elite and secret societies are trying to do to forge a new world order today. Not only are they trying to rediscover Atlantis, but in doing so, they are merely attempting to fulfill the ancient hope which has been at work since the days of Adam and Eve, the earthly rule of the Antichrist. The truth certainly seems stranger than fiction.
First Galactic Empire! For safe and secure society!